So, John, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
How did you get into the fenestration world?
I started back in the mid-80s at a small fabricator in Lancashire making PVC windows, in the early days of PVC windows. And I just fell into the job because I needed a job. I'd dropped out of college. I didn't know what I was going to do. Thought about joining the Navy. They didn't want me. So I found a job and spent my first morning on a Elomatic DG79 profile saw, cutting profile. And I stayed in that factory for 18 months. I progressed through into the office, order processing, purchasing, laying out bays. And it was a real good grounding. That first 18 months manufacturing, where I learned manufacturing from start to finish. These days you go in factories, people stay on one job, never move. They don't learn how to make a window, they learn how to do one part of it. In those days we learned everything. We had no support from system houses, there was no technical manuals, there's nothing to learn from. It was trial and error, but we did pretty well. From there, like I say, I went through the office, I learned order processing, purchasing. We expanded, we built conservatories, with no concept of how they should be built, but we learned again, trial and error. And I was there about 9 years. I then was young, ambitious. I'd done a marketing course at night school, and I really wanted to be a salesman. So I got a job with Profile 22 as a field technician, going supporting fabricators in the field. Right. I did that for 12 months, and then they offered me a sales position. So that was great. 12 months after that, another position came up, which was exports. It was a difficult time. It was, global economy had crashed, global recession. And they sort of picked on me, I think, because I was a bit technical and a bit sales, and I could look after the customers we got. But in the 18 months I was in that role, we did really well. We got new customers on in Ukraine, in America, in quite a few places. Never got an order from an existing customer, but we got quite a few new ones on. So that was okay. But big new customer in China. But I went to China and I thought, there's not a lot of future in shipping profiles halfway around the world to a country that's just going to copy what you've got and do it equally as well. So position came up within Profile 22 back in the UK organisation. I applied for that. I was successful, and so I was technical support manager there. And then I got an opportunity to move to Comlin, and that was probably one of the best moves. I was technical manager in the UK for Comlin for 8-9 years, and I learnt a lot more there in terms of system design, extrusion, heavily involved in development of new systems, several new systems through that period. A lot of upheaval. It was a roller coaster. Comlin went bust at that point. It was taken over a couple of times. The organisation changed considerably, and I was there for quite some time. We merged with KBE and Trocal, and the organisation changed. I wasn't as happy as I had been, and I got an approach from Vika to go back into sales. So I explained to them at the time, I'm not really a salesman. And he said, it doesn't matter. Get here and you can do lots of stuff. There's lots of scope. So I went, and interestingly, the guy that had actually approached me and taken me on had left the company before I started, which was awkward. But it was all okay, and then I did several roles in the company in terms of product development, customer support, new business sales, and marketing. And I had a good couple of years there and enjoyed it very much. But things, let's say, didn't work out in the end, and I moved on back to Epwin. Right. Swish this time, not Profile 22, although it did kind of merge back together while I was there. Another 2 years in profile sales. I had my successes, it was okay, but it wasn't really for me. I then went for 2 or 3 years working back into a fabricator, which I enjoyed. Back at the chalk face, as it were, real job. And then I saw an advert for a job at the BRE, Building Research Establishment in Watford. Always held it in great esteem as an organisation. I applied for the job, was successful, and I went there to help set up certification schemes for windows and doors. What I knew. And I was doing that, and that was fine. And then I got talking to a gentleman called Bill Keating, who had his own certification company, small company, almost fledgling, if you will. And there was an opportunity to join. And it wasn't the best of offers, I'll say. It was the money wasn't great when I started, but I could see the potential. So I went with that, and that's the best move I ever made. Effectively working for myself, running my own diary, growing the business. I bought the business off Bill 3 years ago now, and we're just going from strength to strength. It's the people that work within the business are all industry people. They've all come from window manufacturers or glass manufacturers. So we know the industry, we know a lot of people in the industry. I think we provide a very, very good service. Customers seem to appreciate what we do. I think we're firm but fair. We see a non-conformity, we point it out, and we get it resolved. And at the same time, I became MD of ERC testing. So that's the test house where most of our clients go and test, UCAS accredited, as is ER certification. And daily, every day of the week, we are testing windows and doors, weather, security, abusive forces, cycle testing. We test glass, safety glass, 12600 impact rig. So we've a lot going on, but it's all window industry. We don't stray outside it. We don't know anything about anything else. We're very limited, but we're very focused.
Wow, that, John, is quite a journey. There's no stone unturned. I think you covered everything there. Apart from, did you ever work for an installer? No, you didn't.
I worked for the company that I worked for after Epwin the second time. They were quite big on installations, but I was not involved in installations. So
no, I think you tick all the boxes there, John. You've covered everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Is that it? Can I go?
Yeah, pretty.
Thank you very much. Good night.
So, it's safe to say, John, you've seen the industry change. What for you is the biggest change that you've noticed? Is it something around technical manuals?
Yeah, well, most of them have a technical manual now. Yeah, no, that wouldn't be the biggest change. Yeah, it's got certainly more professional. I think when you look at the products we were producing back in the 80s, they were a bit basic, to be fair. PVC extrusions for windows and doors really came in the 70s. The 80s, it was still very much the early days. There was some lousy systems about. There really were. There was some absolute rubbish. And the hardware, you could just give it a nudge and you could break in a window that was produced in those days, or a door. We were producing doors with 2 rollers and a latch. Absolutely garbage in terms of security. These days, and it's been very much pushed by standards and regulations. The standard of the products is way, way above that now. So, there's no bad systems out there now. There's, all the hardware companies manufacture products that will meet the requirements of PAS 24 and secured by design, as long as they're assembled correctly. And the consumer is getting such a way better product, not just in terms of security, but also energy performance as well. So at ERC now we've got the PLC scheme, which stands for Part L compliance, and it gives approvals for energy ratings and also U values for windows and doors. As long as the simulations come from an accredited source, then they can be registered with us, and then the homeowner's getting full assurance that the product's going to perform as advertised.
So, yeah, you make a good point there because, like you say, I mean, there's probably an argument to say there's still a lot of it because not everyone tests their products, do they?
No, they don't. I think it's in terms of PVC and aluminium, a lot's done by the system supplier. But it's true, a standard S-bag locking system is not going to be particularly secure, but fitted in an upstairs window, unaccessible, that's okay. In terms of weather performance, it'll probably be absolutely fine. In terms of doors, yeah, I think there should be a lot more testing. We test products with our clients every year, and there's a lot of failures. I've always said that when our clients come with a range of windows and doors for testing, for weather security, etc., the chances of them getting through everything without a single hiccup is pretty unlikely. So anybody that comes and passes everything in one go, they've done exceptionally well. I always say it's around 70% failure rate.
Right.
Not per product,
No.
but per visit, if you will. To get everything through first time. And there might be a fabrication issue. Somebody's done something not quite correctly. It might be a component issue. There's lots of reasons for failure. And then, obviously, once there is a failure, we look at it, or the customer looks at it, decides what went wrong, tells us why it went wrong and what they're going to do about it to put it correct. And that might lead to a retest. It might be that the corrective action they suggest is sufficient to accept and move on. And then in an audit, we'll go and look at that corrective action and see that they've carried it out.
So ultimately, it's not, failure is part of the everyday, in all fairness. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to fix a problem.
You always learn when you go testing.
Yeah.
Obviously, with my previous roles, I've been going testing as the company manufacturing the products for a long time. And I've got to say, you always learn. You're always learning. Every time you go to test, even if it passes a weather test, at some point the water might come in way beyond what you need it to in terms of the exposure category. But you'll look at that and think, well, why is it leaked there? What can we do better? Why is it finally gone at that point? Yeah, it's got to a pretty high standard, but we could get it even better. We could improve on that. Same with security. You might pass a test, but it might be by the skin of your teeth. You might see something break that just about holds together under mechanical load. But you think, well, we could do better than that. And next time we come, we'll pass by a greater margin and be a lot more comfortable stood there watching it crack and bend and twist and creak.
So realistically, it's like an MOT. You get your advisor it's up to you.
Absolutely.
If you want to push and make it better for next time.
Yeah, it's a learning experience. But, if everybody passed every time, there wouldn't be any point testing, would there?
No.
And that's not the reality. The reality is that there's a lot of failures and there's lots of different reasons for those failures to occur. And it gives the company a chance to improve.
Well, I suppose from a testing point of view then, John, innovation in products, is that... Does testing play a massive role in that? Because ultimately, you want the possibilities are endless in terms of design and looks and things like that. But ultimately, they've got to.
Aesthetics has become a massive thing in the last few years, hasn't it? With the mechanically jointed flush sashes, you name it. Systems companies, designers, they've concentrated very, very much on aesthetics, but it has to function as well. So anybody introducing a new system, new hardware, they're going to go to test it extensively before they release it to the market. Because if it's not going to be secure to past 24, there's absolutely no point releasing it because you're going to really limit, where you can sell it.
So, yeah, that makes sense. Past 24, like you say, in this day and age, if they haven't got it, you can't start a new build. There's so many things you can't do, so it's limiting. So that's your bread and butter then, really.
It is, yes.
And then from a part, all these regulations, where do trickle vents come into it? What's your take on those?
Trickle vents serve a purpose in providing clean air inside a dwelling, which is really important. In this day and age, there's there's lots of health problems, asthma, chest issues. It's well documented that people generally aren't as healthy as they used to be. And the government sees it as really important to ventilate. But trickle vents aren't the way of doing it, let's be honest. Number one, you're producing a really thermally efficient window and putting holes through it. So you're destroying the thermal performance of the product. The government did a study on internal air quality some years ago now and published the findings, I think, in a report in 2019. And that basically said that trickle vents don't work, because when you need them to work is generally when you're laid in bed at night with the curtains closed, so you're not getting any airflow anyway. They only work if the wind's blowing, and if it's blowing too much, you're going to close them. So really they don't work. So there's got to be a move, and it is coming with future homes, that it's going to be mechanical heat recovery ventilation. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it's got to be. You've got to make the house thermally efficient. You've got to ventilate it somehow, but it's got to be done the right way.
Yeah, I mean, technically with our house, from the start, it's got it's built into the places with moisture anyway. The kitchens, the bathrooms, they've got extractors, and they're constantly running and just exchanging the air. So there's not many trickle vents, but there are in our house, in some rooms. But I think
the permanent mechanical extraction in the wet rooms, the design would be normally to have trickle vents in the other rooms and drag the air from the outside through those rooms and out through the wet rooms. Whether that really works when doors are closed, I'm not sure.
And that's it. And then ultimately, you're right. This is what a lot of people their gripe is. They're paying all this money to seal. It's complete. You're testing them to make sure that they seal and close and they're thermally efficient to the letter. And then you put the hole in.
Yeah, I mean, modern windows, there's very little air leakage. They are very high performance.
Excuse me. But in turn, though, that is technically part of the problem, isn't it? Because everything is so sealed, and people aren't educated like the old days and open the windows.
The old-fashioned wooden windows that didn't have any kind of seals on them and let air through all the time. That was keeping us healthy. But it's not really the right way of doing it, is it? You've got to have thermal efficiency, and we've got to have clean air. We've got to have both, and the solution has to be right for both. My own kitchen extension that I did 2 years ago, I've got heat recovery ventilation in that. It's just a standalone ventilator that goes in the wall. When we're cooking, it turns itself up. When there's nobody in there, it turns itself down. It measures the air quality, it measures carbon dioxide, it measures VOCs, and it reacts accordingly to what it's finding. It exchanges the air. On a cold day, it's heating the air that it's bringing in and pushing the dirty air out. It works very, very well, and I don't have any trickle vents, and I don't have a problem with drafts and cold air coming in.
No, but I think you've covered ventilation there quite nicely, John. I think you've covered it for everyone. I think everyone knows that's the issue. But from a testing point of view...
Well, they're not tested.
Right.
They're not tested. They're not on the windows. Secure by Design did, in the first draft of a recent guide, did look at saying that all testing should be done with trickle vents, seen as most windows were being produced with trickle vents for new build and replacement. But I think that they shied away from it because it's never been done, and it would have meant a massive change to what people have tested. And
completely change everything,
wouldn't it? So...
leakage, everything would just be...
Yeah.
Or would it...
To explain, BS 6375 Part 1 is the standard that covers weather performance, air, wind and water. Okay. And that calls up 3 different standards for each of those as a test standard, and then each of those as a classification standard. So when you have past 24, you think it's a standard. It's not. It calls up so many substandards. So first of all, it'll call up a material-specific standard, BS 7412, for example. BS 7412 will call up BS 6375, parts 1, 2, and 3. under those 3 standards, there's a whole raft more. So remembering what's written in each one is quite difficult, but suffice it to say that it says if you've got a letter plate or a trickle vent on a window or door, for weather performance, you tape it up. And that's what's always been done. So the suggestion from SBD of now testing with it not taped up was a big move and against what it says in the standards. So maybe that will come in future, but I think there'll be a move away from trickle vents anyway. So maybe not.
Right, interesting. You think that the ventilation, alternative ventilation source?
Well, it's got to come in. It's coming in new builds. So if it comes in new build, it'll follow on in replacements.
Interesting, very interesting. People are going to learn something from this podcast, that's for sure. And I'm also picturing you reading that the regulations at night to fall asleep. Is that out?
No.
No.
I spend enough time working during the day. I'm not working at. Well, no, that's not fair. I do work sometimes in the evening, but I'm a morning person.
Right.
If you want me to do something, get me to do it about 6 o'clock in the morning, because there's a good chance I'll do it to my best of my ability at that time. If you ask me to do it at 6 o'clock in the evening, forget it. I'm useless.
Right. So you mentioned you set up a new scheme for thermal performance.
Yes. So we set that up only last year. So there's a new website. It's called PLC. And it differs from other schemes that may have been around for a while in that it goes into the details. So if you look online and you look at the approvals of any company that's on there, you'll see a lot of detail. So in other schemes, you might see that, ABC windows have an A-rated window, but you've no idea what that window is. You don't have any idea. It might give the brand of the system, but it won't tell you how it's made, what sort of glass it is. It'll just tell you that company can make an A-rated window with that system. So what we've done, and what we thought was really important to get into the website, and so that people can check that what they're getting is actually what they're paying for. So we detail the frame, and we detail the glass, and we detail the approval. And the approval can be either for a rating or for a U value.
Right.
And U values you can do to different sizes now under EN 14351, which is called up in Part L of the building regs. So you can go to bigger sizes to do your standard calculation on. And if a company wants that approved, it can be approved. It can be on the system. That isn't a problem. But we put the size of the frame that we've calculated on in the approval on the website, so that everybody can see. It's totally transparent, and everybody can see what's approved and what they're buying. And we've got several companies on it now. We're up to about 80 approval companies there now. And one company in particular, or several companies have many approvals into the hundreds. One in particular has over 2,500. So there's filters on there, so you can actually drill down and find out exactly what you want. So it becomes a database, a source of knowledge for trade customers and for processes within the company. So how do we get a 1.2 U value on this type of window? Well, let's filter it, look at PLC, filter it, drill down. Yeah, we've got a few choices there now. We can drill down a bit further in terms of what frame we want or what glass supplier we're going to use, and we can get down to exactly what we want, place the order.
Wow. Right. Okay. You haven't thought about this at all, have you?
What? Which bit?
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah,
Good.
it does.
I'm glad I'm making some sense. I
Yeah.
don't always.
So there's a lot of effort. Why? Why go to that?
We felt that the other schemes didn't give any information, and we thought it was valuable for consumers, trade customers, even surveyors, or checking installations are compliant with building regs. How do they know? How do they know if they can't see what that approval consists of? They can maybe see that it's a PVC window. They can maybe see that it's got some coated glass in there. But beyond that, how do they know? full specification. There's no hiding place. It's there. It's clear. Everybody can see what should be there and cross-reference it against the installation.
So just sort of covering all bases, where does fire come into testing? Is that something that's on the...
No. Testing of fire doors is a big undertaking. It's very, very expensive, very costly exercise. It's not something that we're involved in. And to be perfectly honest, I don't see us becoming involved with fire doors in the future. We certify under our UCAS and approved body status companies manufacturing fire-rated units. That's cascaded data from the fireglass suppliers, so we're just checking that they're being assembled according to the certification that the supplier holds. But no, we're busy with the window schemes that we've got. We also are accredited by UCAS for ISO 9001 certification, and we're growing with the window industry, not just in the UK but across Europe. So we've several customers in Poland and Lithuania and Turkey. We work for an American certification body on safety glass and sealed units all across Europe. And we've got sufficient growth as a company coming from those strands without thinking about going down the route of fire doors, which is another huge area, massive expense to think about it. So it's not in our plans.
No, it makes sense. Just with all the regulations and everything, I know it's a massive thing for construction, but obviously it's its own kettle of fish, isn't it? It's a serious business.
It's obviously with Grenfell, there's a lot of focus on fire-rated products, and I think in times gone by, maybe there wasn't enough focus on those products or the installation of them, but that is massively improved. And there's lots of companies that can do that, experts in that field, and we're not gonna go anywhere near it.
John, that is quite a journey.
Is it?
I think everyone's learned something from it anyway so far, from this podcast so far. But we're now time for the questions.
Okay.
In all of that journey, is there a low point that sticks out for you?
Leaving Vika.
Right.
Because I didn't leave by choice.
Interesting.
No. It's there's quite a long story behind it, and I don't think I'll bother with it today. But
just give me a name, John. Give me a name.
If you weren't recording, I would do. But Vika's very much a changed company now. It's not the company I work for. I mean, I left there 16 years ago. So there's very, very few people still working there that I work with. It's completely changed.
Well, flip side to that, is there a high point that sticks out for you?
I think buying ER certification.
Yeah, you did. You sort of. We didn't go back to that. So I'm going to let you finish that thought.
Yeah, when I joined ER certification, the potential earnings were quite a lot lower than what I would have been used to. But I could see the potential. I've been in the industry a long time by that point. I knew a lot of people running window companies up and down the country, people that were with other certification bodies at the time. And I knew if I went to talk to them, there'd be a good chance they'd switch to ER certification, and that happened. And that first year, more than doubled what I was expecting to earn, and never looked back from there. It's gone from strength to strength. The company's still growing, and it's just down to the fact that I think we do a very efficient job. We give our clients a very detailed audit report, and I think the industry knowledge that's within the company is second to none.
Nice, brilliant. Well, last question. If you had to spend 2 weeks on a desert island with someone from the fenestration industry, who would it be?
I'll go Pete Fradley.
Ah.
Pete Fradley's our certification and compliance manager. He's very, very good at what he does. And, I think if I was on a desert island, he'd have us a hut built within the first day. He'd have fires going. He'd be catching fish. He'd be fantastic.
Brilliant answer. I like that. John, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Richard.
Open invitation. You're welcome back anytime. So let us know how you get on. Thank you.